House will please come to order. Those persons not having privilege of the floor will please vacate the chamber. All members and guests in the galleries will please rise as we are led in prayer today by Brooklyn Dean, guest of the gentleman of the 13th District, Delegate Hecker.
Let us pray. Dear Lord Jesus, we thank you for the day you have blessed us with, for your many blessings, and for everyone here today. We pray for the members of the House of Delegates for peace and direction. We ask that every discussion and decision made be according to your will. We ask that each person act and be led according to your word. May they speak of truth, integrity, justice, and fairness. Keep us safe as we go about the rest of our day. In your holy name we pray, and we all say amen.
If all members and guests will please remain standing, we'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance today by the gentleman of the 46th District, Delegate Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the greatest country on earth on this President's Day 2024. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members and guests may be seated. Reading the journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Friday, February 16th, 2024.
Gentleman of the 3rd, Delegate Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and it be approved as having been read.
Gentleman from the 3rd, ask unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Are there objections? No objections are heard. Further reading of the journal will be dispensed with. Gentleman from 96 for an update on the calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, your Committee on Rules met and moved committee substitute for House Bill 5021 to House calendar, and we moved from House calendar to special calendar, committee substitute for House Bill 4809.
Introductions. Chair would like to welcome this morning in our page program Kennedy Valentine from Charleston Catholic. Gentleman of the 43rd, Delegate Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to announce the sponsor of the West Virginia Academy of Family Physicians in celebrating the 35th anniversary of the Doctor Day program. Our family doctor today is Wesley Lafferty from Charleston. Everyone please give him a warm welcome.
Gentleman from the 78th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, in the North Gallery, I have a few friends here today from the Gun Owners of America. We have Alex Shea, who is the West Virginia State Director and also my constituent, Jordan Stein, the Regional Director of Guns Owners of America, Megan Stein, the Administrative Services Director, and J.P. Pichardo, who's the Federal Affairs Assistant. Will the House please make them feel welcome?
Gentleman from 36, Delegate Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very happy to introduce my son, who's paging for us, Joseph Green, if he'll stand.
Gentleman from the 66th, Delegate Nestor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Present with us today are members of the West Virginia Citizens Defense League from my county, Ms. Deborah Farrell and David Clark. If you would please stand to be recognized. David is also the proud owner of Udo, who's the cousin to my animal, Owen. So please make him feel welcome.
Delegate from the 9th, Delegate Barnhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning. Today for my introduction, I'm going to introduce an individual who truly needs no introduction. If you turn your attention to the South Gallery, please join me in welcoming my good friend and our former colleague, Charlie Reynolds, and his girlfriend, Kara. Let's give them a warm welcome.
Gentleman from the 23rd, Delegate Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, in the West Gallery, I have a constituent of mine here today. He has a particular interest in Senate Bill 790, just happens to be our curator of the arts, history, and culture. Mr. Randall Reed Smith, would he stand in the House? Please make him feel welcome.
The The gentlelady from the 56th, Delegate Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Happy Monday, everybody. I've got a couple announcements today. First of all, it's Girl Scout Day here in the Capitol, so if there's any Girl Scouts up in the galleries, could you please stand and be recognized? Yay! Okay, on the other end of the spectrum, I've got some Boy Scouts here today, too. I've got Troop 5 from 1st Presby on behalf of myself and the rest of the delegates from Kanawha County. The Boy Scout troop has been chartered since 1914, so they're a very old Boy Scout troop, and today they're getting their citizenship badge. We've got, if they could stand when I recognize them, Charlie Gardner, Mason Bossy, Andrew Hill, Mitchell and Michael Farrell, Nathaniel Dodd, Spencer Linsby, Lucas Jeffers, Sam Wilkinson, and they are joined by some Boy Scout adults, Andy Hill, Scott Bossy, Harper Gardner, and Michael Dodd, if everyone can make them feel welcome.
The gentleman from the 72nd, Delegate Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have some friends with me today. Paging for me today is Miss Savannah Sherrard, if she'd please stand up. And in the South Gallery, her parents, Steve Sherrard and Tara Shields, if the House would please make them feel welcome.
The delegate from the 17th, Delegate Pinson.
Good morning, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joining me on the House floor today is my daughter, Avery Pinson. And then being introduced for the very first time to my friends in the House is my son, Jordan Pinson. Oftentimes, before I come to work, Jordan reminds me to share peace with my colleagues, and I'd like the House to please make them feel welcome.
The gentlelady from the 63rd, Delegate Dittman.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the North Gallery, I'm joined by a couple of friends of mine today, Lisa Wu, and visiting the Capitol for the first time ever is Sharon Gehring. Please make them feel welcome. Also, I have some pages today from Gilmer County. We have Kendra Fox. She is here with the Girl Scout Troop 10395, and her mom is in the West Gallery, Marissa Fox. Please make them feel welcome. And finally, from Braxton County, we have Kelsey Williams and Mackenzie Conrad, and they are here today with their favorite aunt, Jennifer McPherson. Please make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 96th, Majority Leader Householder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to have some guests who traveled down from Hampshire County today. Paging for us today is Brianna Cosner. She is a 9th grade student at Hampshire High School, and she is accompanied by her parents, Brian and Penny Cosner, in the West Gallery. If the House would please make them welcome.
Gentleman from the 60th, Delegate Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as Delegate Young had mentioned earlier, today is Girl Scout Day here at the Capitol. And I have some special young ladies from my district in Sissonville. And those are troop numbers 322-80-10572. They're in the North Gallery, the top row, went up as high as they could get up there. And they've had a special morning already. They got to go visit with Justice Bunn and see the new exhibit in the Supreme Court of the third floor. So if we give them a warm welcome, thank you.
Gentleman from the 20th, Delegate Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Have here with me today Paige Arabella Stallnaker, if she could stand up, and she's escorted today by her grandmother, Catherine Stallnaker, if the House would make them feel welcome.
The gentleman from the 13th, Delegate Heckert.
Speaker, I want to thank Brooklyn for coming today and doing the prayer and paging for us, Brooklyn Dean, and I want to thank her mom and dad Rob and Stephanie Deem that are in the West Gallery, please stand up and make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 27th, Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure today to introduce some people from my area, and it's IDD Day, and I think that we need to appreciate the people that serve the people who need us most. And so from Autism Services Center in Huntington, if they're in, I believe, in the West Gallery, would you please stand as I call your name? Barbara Lesher, Tracy Vaughn, and David Finley. And from Diversified Assessment and Therapy Services, we have some individuals, Jessica Taylor, Lindsay Banfi, Morgan Thompson, and my daughter, Wyatt Ottery. And then my wife is somewhere hiding in this building because she would not let me introduce her. But please make these people feel welcome.
Delegate from the 37th, Delegate Gearhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two very special introductions today in the West Gallery. Easy to spot. On the back row is my middle daughter. She likes to say she's my favorite daughter, Sarah Davies. My second introduction is a Paige. She was sitting here in front of me, but she is off wandering, taking care of business, so I guess I'll miss that part of it. But you should know that she is number one. She's number one. She's my first grandchild. She's number one because she is the only girl, and she is number one because she is number one in my heart. Her name is Riley Davies.
Yay! The gentlelady from the 31st, Delegate Mazzocchi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the North Gallery, I have Keelan Perry and her dad, Roy. She's from the Logan Middle School, and she's here today to job shadow all of us. So please make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 21st, Delegate Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two introductions today. First, paging with us is Branson Manuel, if he'll stand up. Branson is visiting us from Winfield Elementary today and accompanied by his dad in the South Gallery, Bill Manuel. If he'd stand up as well, and the House will make them feel welcome. Also joining us from Hurricane High School is Hayden Hodge, and from Hurricane Middle School, Lennon Hodge, accompanied by their parents, also in the South Gallery, Tony and Jessica Hodge. I'll make them feel welcome as well.
The gentleman from the 54th, Delegate Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe we are joined today by a former colleague from Berkeley County, Marshall Wilson. If Marshall's in the gallery somewhere, would you please rise?
The gentleman from the 12th, Delegate Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we welcome the youth and staff from the Boys and Girls Clubs across West Virginia, including Huntington, Parkersburg, St. Mary's, and Charleston. Today from Parkersburg is Elena Caleb, Jasmine Dunn, Haley Fleek, Isabel Thomas, Aaron Marshall, Braxton Marshall, Raleigh Parsons, and J.C. Modison. Would you please welcome them? Thank you very much.
The gentleman from the 46th, Delegate Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Delegate Longenacre and I have pages here today from Eastern Greenbrier Middle School. If they'll stand when I call their name, please. Drew Brown, Adeline Wallington, and Peyton Irvin. They're here today in the South Gallery with their parents. If they'll stand when I call their name, Drew's mom, Debbie McClintock, Adeline's mom, Alicia Wallington, and Peyton's parents, Anthony and Jennifer Irvin. Will the House please make them welcome?
Gentleman from the 40th, Delegate Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Paging for us today are two grandsons of one of our former delegates, Arnold Ryan, from several years ago, but his two grandsons are down paging for us. If they would stand up when I call their name, Dean Ryan and Aiden Ryan. Dean is somewhere on the floor, I believe, back in the back. Wave at us, Dean. He's going to be a delegate here someday, I can tell you. But anyway, they're the grandsons of Arnold Ryan, and they were brought down here today by their dad, Arnold Wayne Ryan, Jr. He's sitting up in the North Gallery, and these boys are also the nieces of Melinda Swigert, wherever she went, back in the back. So please make these two young men feel welcome. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 55th, Delegate Akers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to first recognize a page we have with us today, Avery Akers from Sacred Heart Grade School. Her mother is Dr. Olga McDaniel here in Charleston, and her dad, we all know, is Robert Akers, who's the Chief Counsel for the Energy Manufacturing Committee here in the House. Please let Avery feel welcome, and also a little clap for her dad, too, please. Then, Mr. Speaker, also, if I may welcome back one of our good friends who had a little bit of a health scare last week. So glad to have back our friend and delegate, Dave Fogan, today.
Gentleman from the 45th, Delegate Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Along with my colleagues from the 44th and the 50th, in the South Gallery, I'd like to introduce a very special couple and dear friends of ours. They're down here today in support of the Citizens Defense League Day here at the Capitol. If Larry and Cheryl Patrick would stand and let the House make them feel welcome.
Our thanks this morning to Delegate Height. Standing committee reports.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration House Bill 5280, West Virginia Short Line Railroad Modernization Act, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Economic Development and Tourism has had under consideration House Bill 5544, require a report on the Mountaineer Trail Network detailing progress towards completing the goals of the Mountaineer Trail Network, and reports back a committee substitute therefore with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 5597 relating to school bus driver charged with DUI, committee substitute for Senate Bill 152, displaying official U.S. motto in public schools, and committee substitute for Senate Bill 280 allowing teachers in public schools to discuss scientific theories, and reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that they each do pass as amended, but that they first be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Report will be received. Each bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 5039 relating to authorizing the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles to enforce administrative penalties for the civil offense of refusing a secondary chemical test, and reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 4008 to amend the time required for providing notice of an entry onto land for visiting a grave from 10 days to 3, House Bill 4191 relating to requirements imposed on social media companies to prevent corruption and provide transparency of election-related content made available on social media websites.
House Bill 4706, creating the Utility Pole Rights-of-Way and Easement Mapping Initiative. House Bill 5020, relating to deferred adjudication and pretrial diversions for first offense DUI cases. House Bill 5238, mandating that all courts provide adjudication for juvenile offenders for traffic violations to the Division of Motor Vehicles, and House Bill 5606, relating generally to money laundering, and reports back committee substitutes therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitutes each do pass.
That report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration House Bill 4880, relating to personal income tax Social Security exemption, and House Bill 5024, relating to exempting non-grantor trusts administered in this state from the personal income tax, and reports back committee substitutes therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitutes each do pass.
For what purpose does the gentleman from 66, Douglas Nestor, seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I be recognized for the purposes of making a motion?
Well, depending on what the motion is, but the gentleman's recognized.
Yes, sir. Well, the motion is to recommit House Bill 5039, which was just announced, back to the Judiciary Committee for reconsideration. The bill is currently written, has the effect of removing court authority from the court system here in the state of West Virginia for allegations of implied consent and license revocations, and remands it back to the Division of Motor Vehicles. I think this is undoubtedly going to bring back an Office of Division of Motor Vehicles hearing examiners, create unnecessary budget expenditures, and would certainly defeat the purpose and spirit of Senate Bill 130, which went into effect June 4th, 2020. I've consulted with the House Judiciary Chairman, and he's not opposed to the relief that I'm requesting.
We're entering into a debate right now, Delegate. Hold on just a second. With that motion, that motion is in order. Chair will permit that motion just a moment. The committee report from Committee on Finance on House Bills 4880 and House Bill 5024 has been received with the recommendation those bills each do pass. That report has been received. A motion to recommit a bill is in order. So at this time, the chair will recognize the gentleman to 66, Douglas Nestor, for a motion to recommit House Bill 5039.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, the motion is to recommit House Bill 5039 to the House Judiciary Committee for reconsideration. Again, this bill is currently written, will essentially usurp the authority of the court systems here in the state of West Virginia to revoke driver's license privileges on implied consent violations and remand those to the Division of Motor Vehicles for consideration. The bill is currently written certainly would recreate an Office of Administrative Hearing Examiners, would certainly increase a budget for the state of West Virginia, would definitely involve a fiscal note, and it would also again defeat the purpose and spirit of Senate Bill 130, which was passed June 4th, 2020. So again, I have consulted with the House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Mr. Tom Fast. He's not objectionable to the relief being requested at this time. I would also point out that there were several members, or at least a few members of the Judiciary Committee that were not present on Friday when the bill was considered. So having said that, I urge that the motion be adopted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So ladies and gentlemen, the question now before the House is the motion that House Bill 5039, relating to authorizing the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles to enforce administrative penalties for the civil offense of refusing a secondary chemical test, be recommitted to the Committee on Judiciary. This is a debatable question. The chair in a moment will open the floor to debate on the limited question of shall the bill be recommitted to the Committee on Judiciary. The chair understands this does necessarily imply some measure of debate into the merits of the bill, but that needs to be limited to the extent to which it's relevant for the consideration of the question of whether it be recommitted to the Committee on Judiciary. So in light of that instruction, the question now before the House is, shall the bill be recommitted to the Committee on Judiciary? Shall recognize the gentleman of 22nd, Douglas Linville, to speak on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. So what is the meaning of the motion to recommit. You essentially just made an argument against the bill overall. Is your intent with the motion to recommit to kill the bill?
Yes. Or?
No. That's
House will be in order. The gentleman, 22nd, has the floor.
all right. So have you inquired as to any federal highways dollars which may be at risk if the implied consent law is not upheld or not utilized in the state of West Virginia?
No, sir, but the reason that I did not do that was because the law as it is currently situated would keep the budget the same as it is presently.
So did you receive testimony in the Committee on the Judiciary that DMV presently has administrative hearings for commercial driver's license?
Did not.
Mr. Speaker, I'll speak to the motion.
Gentleman's finished with the questioning.
Mr. Speaker, so we heard in both the Committee on Technology and Infrastructure and when I sat in on the Committee on the Judiciary that they were able to continue to deal with this in this limited portion. So allow me to go into a little bit about the merits of the bill, as the gentleman just mentioned that his intent is outright to kill the bill. So, Mr. Speaker, in the Committee on Technology and Infrastructure, we heard first that they already have administrative hearings and that they can handle this with the one hearing examiner that they already have. The bill contemplates specifically violations to the implied consent law related to the state of West Virginia. So what actually happens there? The answer is that if someone were arrested for a DUI drug, something like that, they're then submitted to a secondary chemical test in the state of West Virginia. In West Virginia, that is a breathalyzer. If they refuse that breathalyzer, when you accept a driver's license in the state of West Virginia, you have implied that you will consent to that breathalyzer test. So what is currently going on? The answer to that is that in some counties, less than 1% of those who allegedly refuse the breathalyzer test are actually ultimately having their driver's licenses automatically suspended. Now, we can argue the merits of that, but they're not actually being taken up in court. So what happens? You get something in the mail that says, hey, your driver's license is about to be suspended because you refused that breathalyzer test. Not even as to whether or not someone was DUI or DUI drugs, but whether or not they refused to take the secondary chemical test. Okay, so then what happens? They're able to appeal that to magistrate court presently. The problem is they're not getting a hearing. In some counties, it's less than 1%, and we've got the data available, and I can make that available to each and every one of you if you'd like to see it, but it's well less than 10% statewide actually ever go to a hearing surrounding this. Well, that's one policy question, but the second policy question is that if FHWA catches on to this, we have significant numbers of dollars, of highways dollars, that are in play. So the gentleman's motion would be available. He could actually defeat the bill here on the floor of the House. The gentleman's motion would be available to him to table it, to park it in rules, any number of things moving forward. But I think in light of not having the division's ability to stand and defend that, and without hearing from the Division of Highways as to how many dollars are potentially in play here, I think that would be an unfortunate move and one which may cost us millions of dollars for our highway fund. And so as a result of that, I would actually urge rejection. And Mr. Speaker, I move to table the motion.
Gentleman from the 22nd has moved to lay upon the table, the motion to recommit the bill to the Committee on Judiciary. So the motion to lay upon the table is not a debatable question, so the House will proceed to a vote. Those in favor of the gentleman's motion to lay upon the table the motion to recommit the bill to the Committee on the Judiciary will please say aye. Aye. Roll call was demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is 10. Demand is sustained. Question is, shall the motion be laid upon the table? Those in favor of the gentleman's motion to lay upon the table will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 50 ayes, 46 nays, and 4 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that motion laid upon the table. Clerk will please report the next of the standing committee reports.
Your Committee on Rules has had under consideration House Concurrent Resolution 2, U.S. Army Specialist Stephen W. Herron Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 3, Legg Brothers World War II Veterans Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 5, George M. Hall Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 7, U.S. Navy Radar Man 3rd Class Craig W. Haynes Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 9, Private Jefferson Howell Memorial Road. House Concurrent Resolution 11, VFD Gregory Lynn Hott Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 12, U.S. Marine Private 1st Class Calvin Lee Loudon Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 14, Assistant Chief David Timothy Tim Wilson Memorial Road. House Concurrent Resolution 15, U.S. Marine Corps Private Timothy Daly Nunn Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 16, Thomas Leo Starsick Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 17, Av and Laura Baisden Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 18, Caldwell Brothers Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 19, Corporal Thomas Lowell Wines Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 20, Specialist for Donnie Lee Hackney Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 22, U.S. Army Corporal William Edgar Hancock Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 23, Cody J. Mullins Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 25, William Bill Harris Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 26, Private 1st Class Jerry Lee Bassett Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 27, U.S. Army Sergeant Jerry Lee Harris Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 28, Caratonis Brothers Armed Forces Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 29, U.S. Army Sergeant Thomas Lawson Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 30, Jack L. Hart Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 31, Stanley and Evelyn C. Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 32, Sloan Brothers Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 33, U.S. Army Private 1st Class Gale Hall Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 34, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Harley Stephen Gabbert Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 35, Gulf War Veterans Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 36, Chief Master Sergeant Dan Chandler Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 37, U.S. Army Private 1st Class Carl J. Osborne Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 38, U.S. Army Private 1st Class William Gorman Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 39, U.S. Army Specialist 3, Delbert Sheridan Buck Huffman Sr. Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 40, U.S. Marine Corps Master Sergeant Edward P. and MP Carl A. McCrae Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 41, Thomas W. Wisner Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 42, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant William E. Miller Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 44, Frank Walker Mosley Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 45, Alexander Arbuckle Abe McLaughlin Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 46, Jacob Jack Taylor Rudolph Sr. Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 50, Jack A. Hatfield Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 51, U.S. Army Colonel Merlin C. Kearns Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 53, U.S. Navy Quartermaster 3rd Class Lawrence Earl Boggs Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 59, Asa H. Kissamore Jr. Memorial Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 60, Tara Don Lewis Memorial Road and Bridge. House Concurrent Resolution 61, Mollahan Brothers Memorial Bridge. Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 62, U.S. Army First Sergeant Clarence Shirley Blake Memorial Bridge, and House Concurrent Resolution 68, U.S. Army Air Force Major Willis Scotty Adams Memorial Bridge, and reports the same back with recommendation that they each be adopted.
That report will be received. Are there other standing committee reports? Okay, for what purpose does Gentleman the 42nd Douglas Steele seek recognition?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, a point of order. On the motion to table House Bill 5039, I believe the gentleman from the 22nd was recognized to ask questions and then engaged in debate. And I believe under House rules, if you've engaged in debate on the underlying motion, a new motion is not in order at the end of your debate. So I would ask for a ruling from the chair as to whether or not to invalidate that vote.
The gentleman's point is well taken. As to the motion for the previous question, the chair will consult the rule as to the motion to lay upon the table. The gentleman's point would be well taken as to the previous question. House will be at ease just a moment. All right, the House will be in order. Chair's consulted our rules, and it is the ruling of the chair that a member may not conclude debate and move the previous question, but a member may conclude debate and move another motion. So the chair will rule that the motion offered by the gentleman from the 22nd was in order at that time. Select committee reports. Executive messages.
Senate Bill 547 was presented to the governor for his action on February 16th, 2024.
The message will be received. Senate messages.
The clerk of the Senate announces that the Senate has passed the following bills. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 375, Healthcare Sharing Ministries Freedom to Share Act.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 444 relating to health insurance coverage for certain emergency services.
The bill will be received, or the message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Senate Bill 610 clarifying authority of Water Development Authority in certain circumstances.
Message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Senate Bill 615 limiting statutory and common law actions for certain electric generating facilities.
Message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Senate Bill 635 modifying rules regarding liquidation of property.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 668 increasing amount of certain controlled substances persons may purchase annually.
The message will be received. Gentleman from 96th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration, that we dispense with the committee reference, and that the bill be read a first time.
The gentleman from 96th asks unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration, that the committee reference be dispensed with, and that the bill be read a first time. Are there objections heard? No objections are heard. The clerk will please read the bill a first time.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 668, increasing amount of certain controlled substances persons may purchase annually.
Bill will be advanced to second reading. Next Senate message.
Clerk of the Senate announces that the Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 669 relating to county economic opportunity development districts.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Clerk of the Senate announces that the Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 714, transferring duties and licensing from Board of Osteopathic Medicine to Board of Medicine.
Message to be received. Bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization. We have other Senate messages, resolutions.
House Concurrent Resolution 82.
Gentleman 96th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with, and that each resolution be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system.
The gentleman asks unanimous consent that the further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with, and that each resolution be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system. Are there objections? No objections are heard. Petitions. Bills introduced.
House Bill 5692.
Gentleman 96th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with, and that each bill be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system.
Gentleman from 96th asks unanimous consent that the further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with, and that each bill be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system. Are there objections? No objections are heard. Motions. Gentleman from 94th, Doug Kump.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to be added as a co-sponsor to House Bill 5017.
Gentleman from the 94th asks unanimous consent to be added as a co-sponsor on House Bill 5017. Is there space available on the bill? Chair's advised there is space available on the bill. Are there objections? No objections are heard. Gentleman will be so added. Gentleman from the 34th, Doug Dean is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to be added to House Concurrent Resolution 82.
Gentleman from the 34th asks unanimous consent to be added as co-sponsor on HCR 82. Are there objections? No objections are heard. Gentleman will be so added. Gentleman from the 25th, Doug Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ask unanimous consent to be added to a co-sponsor of House Bill 5017.
5017. Is there space available on the bill? There is space. Chair advises there is space available on the bill. Are there objections? No objections are heard. Gentlemen will be so added. Other motions? Other motions? If not, unfinished business.
Committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 6, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant James Ira Jr. Spurrier Memorial Bridge.
The question is on the adoption of committee substitute for House Concurrent Resolution 6. Is there debate on the resolution? Gentleman of 37, Gearhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have not had an opportunity to read House Concurrent Resolution 6, I think you would benefit from reading that. Today we take the opportunity to honor a long overdue honor for Staff Sergeant Junior Spurrier. Junior Spurrier is an American hero in every sense of the word. Junior Spurrier was wounded in battle in World War II. He was wounded severely in both hands. He was returned to the United States, at which time he recuperated and requested to be resent to the European theater to France. I'm not going to go through the entire resolution, but during the battles that he fought in France, he was referred to as a one-man army. He was responsible for saving hundreds, maybe even thousands of American lives. When Staff Sergeant Spurrier returned to the United States, he was honored in the city of Bluefield with a parade for his heroism. There were 30,000 people at that parade, 3 times the current population of the city of Bluefield. Staff Sergeant Spurrier also is a great redemption story, something we can learn something from. Because if you read that resolution, you'll understand what he had to go through in his mind once he returned to the United States, having lived through and perpetrated some of the real difficult parts of the act of war. He struggled a lot, and that's also contained in this resolution. However, he worked his way through those struggles and did finally come to peace with his actions in war and lived out a peaceful life and passed away in 1984. It's not often in this chamber that we have a Congressional Medal of Honor winner that is before us from that far back that we haven't honored. I think possibly that may have been through some of the struggles that Staff Sergeant Spurrier went through, that he worked his way through and ended his life peacefully, at peace with himself. And it is time that the state of West Virginia honored Staff Sergeant Spurrier with this naming resolution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there other debate on this resolution? If not, the question is, shall the resolution be adopted? Roll call is demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question is, shall the resolution be adopted? Those in favor of adoption will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there are 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that resolution adopted. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Is there other unfinished business? If not, bills on third reading.
Senate Bill 790, changing reference to Curator of Department of Arts, Culture, and History to Cabinet Secretary.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there objection to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Gentleman of 68 to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 790 elevates the Curator of the Department of Arts, Culture, and History to a Cabinet Secretary by amending 2111 by striking the word Curator and adding the words Cabinet Secretary. I urge passage.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Is there debate on the bill? Gentleman of 23rd, Doug Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, if you heard me this morning, I have a dear constituent who happens to be our curator. And for those who don't know, our current curator has spent, this is his 19th year with the state of West Virginia, traveled the world as an artist, as a singer, and now came back to Barboursville, West Virginia, where I'm from, and really put forth an effort to become someone who cares about advancing the arts, culture, and history in West Virginia. So not only do I want this bill to pass, or think this bill should pass because of the gentleman in the position, but Mr. Speaker, the bill doesn't actually mention our current curator's name. So I want to talk about what the department consists of, and it consists of the arts section, the archives and history, the museums, historic preservation, state library, National Coal Heritage Area Commission, administrative section. Then there are 3 citizen commissions: Commissioner of the Arts, Commission on Archives and History, and the Library Commission. And I believe that this position should be a cabinet secretary position for the state of West Virginia. I think it says a lot that we would promote this position to a cabinet secretary position. So, Mr. Speaker, I would urge passage of the bill.
Is there further debate on the bill? If not, the question before the House. Yes, Gentleman 97, Doggett Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have to take a second here to talk a little bit about this piece of legislation. I'm so happy that this piece of legislation is before us. Mr. Randall Reed Smith is a dear friend of mine, and I'm not voting for this bill because he's a dear friend of mine. I'm voting for this bill because this position should be a secretary position. And if anyone in this state has worked to earn their position to be risen to a secretary position, it would be our curator that we have now. This gentleman has travels all over the state promoting our history and our culture, from band competitions to helping set up different types of fairs and festivals for all over our state, working on memorials and monuments. So I cannot tell you how much that this gentleman has earned this title to be the secretary, and it is time that we make this into a secretary position. And with that being said, Mr. Speaker, I urge passage. Thank you.
Gentleman 98, Doggett Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Until several years ago, West Virginia actually had 4 education bureaucracies. 4 education bureaucracies for a state about the size of 1.8 million people. And those 4 would have been, of course, our Board of Education, our Department of Education. We have our Higher Education Policy Commission. And then we had a 4th agency that was created during the Caperton administration, the Department of Education and the Arts. And I know for quite a while, I know folks on this side of the room, or I guess most of the room now, advocated for, doing away with some of that excess bureaucracy we just did not need, and really trying to focus those dollars on the mission that was intended for those dollars. And so when we advanced that legislation back when I was honored to serve as House Education Chair, we got a bit of pushback. Folks thought, well, geez, this is going to be terrible. You're eliminating the arts and so forth, which we knew was not the case. We were simply trying to curtail the bureaucracy that we just frankly didn't need. And to the curator's credit, he spoke up and said, we can do this. We can do this. We can continue to honor these activities, including our culture and the arts, and I'll save you money by doing it. And he has done just that. And so I'm certainly honored to press green today to elevate this body to a secretary role. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman 12, Doggett Chris.
Okay, guys, I'm the guys with the numbers. And let me tell you something about all the administrators that come before us to ask for budget hearings, and we talk about the operations. Currently, the curator can take a buck and go further than anybody else in this government, by far. I appreciate that. And if there's money to be returned, he tells me so. He's that good. He's given me a new appreciation for the history of the state of West Virginia. For a lot of you that are not in my age group, as you grow older, you grow to a more of an appreciation of the history of our state. He is able to convey that in the simplest terms so people can enjoy the history of our state. He helps each and every one of you in your local areas, and he's well knowledged on every one of your areas when it comes to explaining to the middle schools and the History Bowl and the band operations and keeping the arts alive in West Virginia. It's another point as we do our economic development around the country and around the world. People want to know, what do you do for fun? What do you got going on? And the arts and the culture are a big part of that. We all know that. We consider ourselves a big family in here. And he tries to convey that to the rest of the state. So I urge adoption. Thank you.
Number 22nd, Delegate Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I've known Randall Reed Smith for the majority of my life. And while this bill is not simply about the present curator, I'd like to tell you something that there's been many stories about how important that office is. The curator of arts, culture, and history also does permitting on nearly every infrastructure project in this state. Nucor finally was able to break ground. Guess what? Randall Reed Smith was involved. The Office of Arts, Culture, the Department of Arts, Culture, and History was involved. You want to talk about broadband internet or water or wastewater? The answer is Arts, Culture, and History is involved specifically with one of their divisions. But I'm most proud to support this piece of legislation because the curator has presided over America falling back in love with our Appalachian culture and back in love with the state of West Virginia. And if you don't think that's important, I don't know what to say to you. But I understand he's up in the galleries. Mr. Curator and soon to be Mr. Secretary, thank you very much. I urge adoption, passage.
Question before the House still is, shall the bill pass? Is there further debate on this bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. We have 94 ayes, 2 nays, and 4 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 790, changing reference to curator of Department of Arts, Culture, and History to Cabinet Secretary.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. General Bill 96.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill take effect from passage.
The question now is on the gentleman's motion that the bill take effect from passage. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there were 94 ayes, 2 nays, and 4 members absent. 2/3 of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4640, relating to the transfer of certain revenues derived from lottery activities.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having the bill read? No objections are heard. General Bill 98 to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2014, as the legislature and Governor Earl Ray Tumlin struggled with a significant budget deficit, a bill commonly known as the haircut bill reduced previously legislated appropriations to our state horsemen and kennel owners by 10%. House Bill 4640, like House Bill 3464 that passed the House last year, simply restores those previously legislated appropriations by reinstating the 10% diverted from the PERS and development funds in 2014. That's the bill, Mr. Speaker. I urge passage of the bill.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 73 ayes, 23 nays, 4 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4640, relating to the transfer of certain revenues derived from lottery activities.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4850, removing the sunset clause from oil and gas personal property tax.
The objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read.
Okay, I got it. Committee substitute for House Bill 4809, Healthcare Sharing Ministries Freedom to Share Act.
Okay, are there objections to having committee substitute for House Bill 4809 explained in lieu of having it read? Okay, no objections are heard. Gentleman from 51st, Doug Fast, to explain committee substitute for House Bill 4809.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I explain the bill, I'd ask for a Rule 49 ruling.
Yes, under the set of facts relayed to the chair by the gentleman from 51st, it would be the ruling of the chair that the gentleman belongs to a class of greater than 5 individuals and is therefore eligible to vote on this question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill creates the Healthcare Sharing Ministry Freedom to Share Act. It defines a sharing ministry. It expressly provides that sharing ministries are not insurance and are not subject to the insurance requirements set out in the code. It provides that participation in a healthcare sharing plan satisfies a student of higher education's requirement to have health insurance. Finally, it provides healthcare sharing ministries cannot be considered third-party payers. That is a summary, Mr. Speaker, and I urge passage.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House is shall the bill pass. Is there debate on the bill? Gentleman from 52nd, Doug Rowe, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you answer a few questions, sir?
I yield.
The very last paragraph says healthcare sharing ministries may not be considered third-party payers for any purposes where the term third-party payer appears. What's the effect of that, if you could tell me?
It means that for these healthcare sharing ministries, if you have a provider, a doctor who performs services in an insurance sense, the insurance company would be a third-party payer and the provider would bill the insurance company directly. This is stating that that doesn't happen under a healthcare sharing ministry situation.
Well, who would pay the bill?
The patient is always required to stand good for the bill. And if there is reimbursement or payment to the patient of the bill, then that money can either then go to the provider, or if the patient has already paid the bill, then it's just reimbursement to the patient.
Now, if the bill, let's say the bill's really high, is there any sort of excess coverage or insurance that goes with the healthcare sharing ministry?
No, there's no, that's a major part of this bill. The healthcare sharing ministry is not insurance and it's not tied to insurance.
So the individual patient would have to negotiate with the provider as to what would be paid?
If there is negotiation, yes.
And if the patient can't afford the service, what happens then?
The patient is always responsible under a healthcare sharing ministry scenario. The patient remains responsible for the provider's bill. As I said, if there is payment, then the money can be used towards from the patient to the provider, and so that's how it would work. Or if the patient has already paid the provider, then it can be reimbursement.
Would Medicare be coordinated with this system for older people?
Some healthcare sharing ministries do coordinate with Medicare.
There's nothing in the bill.
As a primary payor.
Okay, and there's nothing in the bill to prevent that, sir?
No.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 93rd, Doug Hornby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speak to the bill.
Gentleman's recognized.
As lead sponsor of this bill, I've worked, I want to thank the Chair of Banking and Insurance and the Chair of Judiciary for working on this with me for about a year. This bill simply creates the freedom to share. It helps patients negotiate with hospitals and with their providers with cash so they can save money. I urge passage.
Is there further debate on the bill? Gentleman, lady Ms. 71st, Dr. Kimball's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for a Rule 49.
Yes, under the set of facts relayed previously to the chair by the lady Ms. 71st, it would be the ruling of the chair. The lady belongs to a class of greater than 5 individuals and is therefore eligible to vote on the question. Is there other debate on this bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 95 ayes, 0 nays, and 5 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4809, Healthcare Sharing Ministries Freedom to Share Act.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4850, removing the sunset clause from oil and gas personal property tax.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Gentleman of the 12th to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill removes the sunset clause from the oil and gas personal property statute. I'll repeat that. This bill removes the sunset clause from the oil and gas personal property tax statute. The statute defines the methodology by which the tax commissioner determines the fair market value for oil and gas producing properties. The current methodology would not change. The bill merely makes the prior changes permanent. A failure to act will lead to the oil and gas portion of the statute becoming unenforceable. Unenforceable. I urge passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Gentleman the 8th, Doug Kelly is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Speaker, I'd ask for just a little bit of leeway this morning if I could talk about this bill and the impact that it has already had. I understand what my good friend, the Chairman of Finance, has said. But I'd like to give you a little bit of a backstory, if I may, as to why we're here. 2 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, a former delegate stood on this floor and debated this bill with myself and others in this chamber and said this was going to be the end all. This will fix every issue we have with regard to oil and gas and how it's valued, how it's assessed. And many of you were on the floor when that happened. And so here we are, fast forwarding 2 years later, we're faced in Tyler County with a $15.8 million error made by the state tax department. Let me stress that to you again. It was not made by the local assessor. It was not made by the county commissions. This error was from the state tax department, and it includes all the oil and gas counties in the state. And so what we have before us, ladies and gentlemen, is this is a time frame. In March of 2023, they knew they had made a mistake, yet nothing was done. In April, there was also news that the mistake had been made. And then we began to meet. Then they began to meet, and the story was this. Well, whatever you do, don't say it was a mistake. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what else can it be but a mistake? And at that point, it was more than a mistake. It was negligence. Again, not at the hand of the local assessor, but the state tax department, who said if you pass this legislation, it's going to take care of everything. And I get it. Mistakes are made. We all make them. But could they not have fixed it when they realized the mistake was made, and we wouldn't be here today maybe arguing the merits of a bill that we passed 2 years ago? This is not going to change that bill. We're going to continue on with it. If this is passed, the sunset will be removed, and we'll go on. But sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, I think the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different outcome. And I think we need to move cautiously with this, and we need to make a statement to this state tax department, this current
State Tax Department, get your act together and do this right. Or to the governor, I would say, find somebody who will. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 9th, Delegate Barnhart's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, too, would have to rise in opposition respectfully to this bill, mainly because, as my friend has sort of illuminated to, some of the issues with the implementation of this this valuation process, particularly with the fact that, I cannot and I will not vote to enshrine a process that we know there's been problems with and that we know has not been implemented right. We need to get the stakeholders back together, fix this process, and lessen the harm that it has already done. So for those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I would certainly have to urge rejection, and thank you for your time.
Gentleman from the 94th, Delegate Kump.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the delegate from District 8 yield?
Certainly.
I heard your testimony and understand it. To the best of your understanding, has there been any disciplinary or administrative action taken about the individuals who made this error?
To the best of my understanding, to the gentleman, no. I know of no disciplinary actions that have been taken.
Thank you.
Gentleman from the 98th, Delegate Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will the chair yield?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly empathize with my colleagues from both the 8th and the 9th. It sounds like there was clearly an error made, and that should be rectified. And it's my understanding that will be rectified. But if this bill doesn't pass and the bill is allowed to sunset, how much will these counties receive from oil and gas personal property tax?
The calculation in July, starting of July of next year, could be zero based upon whatever the tax department decides to do in the latitude that they'll have. Because it could be, as it says, it's unenforceable. So the counties could very well lose on each one of these. If you remember when we did this 2 years ago, the reason that we're here 2 years ago was because the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the producers that each well is an individual asset. Just like your house and your neighbor's houses, your house is assessed individually. You get a receipt from the assessor every year telling you how much your tax is. Now, your house, the house across the street from you may be in similar build, but obviously the asset is going to be valued individually. So the Supreme Court said each one of these wells, regardless of how many there are to be assessed individually. Tax department didn't like that. They liked the class system. The assessors liked the class system because they didn't have to work. Now, Supreme Court said no, individually. So they, over the process of the last 2 years, they've done it individually. And yes, there are some wells, as in the gentleman's county in Tyler County. I've been on several of those well sites. They're all different. The access roads are different. Some need bridges, some need culverts, some need pond retention areas. Some don't. For us that are in the construction business, we understand that. Each well is not the same. So as they went through this individual assessment process, the tax department hired a contractor that simply went in and made math errors. And yes, it's unfortunate. I understand that. But that has nothing to do with what we're trying to do here. We want to keep the methodology as the Supreme Court has dictated to us, that each well will be assessed individually.
So the legislation that we enacted, was this last year we enacted it or the year before?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Again, it was in response to that Supreme Court ruling that basically said that the way it was being assessed previously was unconstitutional.
That is correct, according to the law cases that went before them.
And again, with regard to, I think, the real impacts that we're seeing from the errors apparently that have been made, voting down this bill won't fix that. It actually might have the opposite result. They could potentially get nothing instead of, what they should be receiving. Is that fair?
To the letter of the law that's in existence right now, and this sunsets, you're correct.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question before the House still is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Does the gentleman 12th wish to close debate on the bill? Gentleman 52nd, Doggett Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to ask the Chair of Finance, if we were to vote this bill down, what happens next? I mean, I see that the sunset date is not this July, but it's next July, so we'll be back in here and able to make changes if need be. But I'm wondering what the backup plan is for this.
We'd have to run it next year, and obviously because it's the year after a governor's election, we won't be here to start until February. So we will be here in February and all of March, clear into April. So our time frame is very short next year if we do not pass it this year.
Well, if we do pass it, can changes be made in it next year so that we don't lose the revenue, all the revenue for the counties, but also we're fair in how it gets assessed?
If we pass this bill so that the sunset is dropped and the methodology stays in place, and then as the gentleman from the 8th required, that the tax department get their act together, which we all have had run-ins with the tax department, that's what needs to happen. And surely as we go through our interim process this year, we will have the tax department hopefully in front of us at one of our committee meetings or the joint committee to find out what happened, what's going on to straighten that mess up and make sure that these counties that felt the deficit because of these contractors' calculations are taken care of.
So if the bill passes, then we'll be able to make tweaks or changes in the methodology, and none of the counties would lose all of their tax revenue.
No, we do not change any of the methodology. All we're doing is eliminating the sunset in this bill.
Right, in this bill, but I mean if this bill passes, then we'll be able to change the methodology if need be next year or the year after.
Yeah, if we so desire that we would want to take a change in policy next February, we could start in February of next year and try it and change it if we so desire.
And we could force the tax department to issue new rules with new analysis and for assessments, correct?
That's correct. I think if I remember right, I think we had to go through two sets of rules. You were there. The rules that they set down the first time, I think, were rejected by you all in rulemaking, and they had to come back with a second set of rules because they were not following the Supreme Court order either.
And then the last effect of passage of the bill would be that the counties would not lose their assessed valuations.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Question still is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Does the gentleman wish to close debate on the bill? If not, the question again is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 71 ayes, 25 nays, and 4 members absent. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4850, removing the sunset clause from oil and gas personal property tax.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House and the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4911 relating to the sale of raw milk.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, Gentleman from the 93rd, Douglas Hornby, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill aims to legalize the direct consumer sales of raw milk by removing existing restrictions that only allow for herd shares. Sellers must label containers clearly and are partially protected from liability. Except for intentional misconduct, this legislation replaces previous rules, but still allows for herd shares, offering both consumer choice and legal clarity in the state's dairy industry. This law puts West Virginia in line with the majority of other states. Raw milk is already legal and available, and this law allows the freedom to choose. I urge passage.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House: shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Gentleman from the 55th, Douglas Acres, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me do two things, maybe a little unexpected. The first is I'm going to agree with a point that our colleague from the 54th made last week on this bill. I'm also going to talk about the Constitution as it relates to raw milk, and I'm not doing this just for effect. This is actually, I think, an extremely important part of this bill, maybe not so much with this particular bill, but it's going to be extremely important with future bills, whether it's this year or if I'm back next year with future bills. The part of this bill that concerns me is the portion of the bill that relates to sellers of raw milk being immune from suit and liability unless they intentionally injure someone. Again, this bill relates to the sale of a product or a product for sale as part of a business, not simply giving this to your friends or your family. And to be honest with you, I just get surprised from time to time when I see that we sometimes give away our constituents' constitutional rights. And our constituents do have a constitutional right under both the U.S. Constitution, the 7th Amendment, and the West Virginia Constitution, Article 3, Section 13, to a right to trial by jury. And it applies to civil cases as well. That is a constitutional right. Now, for 25 years, I have been donating to and supporting conservative candidates who have done things to make my life as a lawyer very difficult at times. But I've done that because I supported their stance on things like being pro-life. I've supported their stance on things like the Second Amendment. I supported their stance on things like opposing the public taking of private properties. We saw increasing encroachments on that in our lives as well. So I supported conservative candidates who maybe weren't always so friendly to what I do for a living because I thought that overall they were best for the state of West Virginia, best for my wife, best for my children, best for my family, and hopefully best for all of you. But I'm continually surprised at how we chip away at a constitutional right that is enshrined in both the federal and state constitution, the right to a trial by jury. It's President's Day, so I'll read you quickly a quote from President John Adams, where he says, these are his words, representative government and trial by jury are the heart and lungs of liberty. Without them, we have no other fortification against being ridden like horses, fleeced like sheep, worked like cattle, and fed and clothed like swine and hogs. Now that mentality can be found in the book of Exodus, chapter 22, section 5, where it states, and to anyone who disagrees, I will tell you wholeheartedly, it's my belief that the laws in this country are founded upon Judeo-Christian principles. That's where our system of laws came from. Exodus states, if a man causes a field or vineyard to be grazed over or lets his beast loose and feeds in another man's field, he shall make restitution for and in his own vineyard. And it goes on to read additional sections of the Bible. Tell us what restitution means if you cause harm to someone else. I am 100% for the ability of people to make and sell raw milk if it's what they want to do. I have no opposition to that whatsoever. You should be allowed to do that. But the next time some large interest comes in, for example, and tells us they want to create jobs in a certain place or maybe dangle some money in front of us, they may also demand immunity in our court system. Now, again, raw milk is not the biggest issue in the world. I'm not that concerned about this, and I've got my Bible app open. I'll swear an oath right now that I'll never file a case against someone who sells raw milk. That's not my issue here today. But if we're going to be consistent with regard to our view of the 7th Amendment and the 13th article of the West Virginia Constitution, we should say that people maintain this constitutional right. And I just have concerns about us normalizing giving away our constituents' constitutional rights. People have a right to a trial by jury. And I know that this still states that if there is a intentional misconduct, you still have a right to your day in court, but who sells a product and intentionally harms someone? That doesn't happen. So the effect of this bill is to create immunity for someone who is selling a product for a profit. And I worry about what may happen either later in this session or maybe sometime next year in the future when someone else comes in and asks for immunity based upon the economic advantage they think they're going to bestow upon our state. We should not give away our constituents' constitutional rights. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there other debate on the bill? Gentleman 76, Garcia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had a question for the gentleman from the 93rd.
Yes, sir.
So if somebody sells raw milk, and let's say they've got labels, and you have to put the date of when the raw milk was produced, I guess, on the label, right?
Yes, sir.
If they make a mistake, put the wrong labels on, and then somebody drinks it and they get sick, based on the immunity in here, there is no recourse whatsoever. I mean, if somebody, probably wouldn't happen very often, but somebody dies, there's no recourse. They have full immunity, correct?
I don't think it's a blanket immunity. It protects against accidents, not misconduct. It doesn't prohibit the right to a trial. It's just for the claims.
Well, and I want to stay specific to the example that I put out there. Somebody puts the wrong label on.
If you choose to drink raw milk, it's the same thing as, I think, if you choose to eat raw chicken, you're definitely going to get sick. Raw milk inherently has some health issues. So you can make cheese, you can make kefir, you can make a lot of things. I'm not forcing anybody to consume raw milk. We're just saying it's legal without a herd share program. There are currently people drinking raw milk across West Virginia. The last 8 years, we've only had less than 4 on average get sick.
No, and I'm just, I'm no genius when it comes to farms and producing and things like that, but I'm assuming, is raw milk like super milk? Does it last longer than regular milk?
It depends on who you ask.
I'm asking you.
Some people think it's great. I don't drink raw milk. I use it to make cheese. And during the COVID pandemic, I used it a lot because milk was not available.
Okay. I guess that's the only thing. If somebody makes a mistake, I'm assuming at some point, raw milk, just like pasteurized milk, expires and can cause issues, correct?
It could, but you can also ferment it into, it expires, people like sour milk. Okay. So the more sour it is, doesn't mean the sicker you're going to get.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from 54th, I could Pushkin's recognized.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman continue to yield? The sponsor of the bill.
Sure.
Thank you. You just made a comparison to raw chicken. Do we give this kind of immunity to those who sell chicken?
I believe we do.
There's an immunity. You cannot, in code, you can't sue somebody that sells chicken.
I'm not. We have the right to farm in West Virginia. It would fall under that.
Yes, I know we have a right to farm, but this is in regards to a product. I spent the weekend trying to think of another product that we grant this type of immunity to. Can you think of one?
Well, we didn't have restrictions on herd shares for any other products either. If you go to the gentleman from Hampshire County, you can buy chickens from him, and you can eat them raw if you want, but you will get sick.
Yeah, and that would be thrown out of court, but you'd at least be able to go to court.
Could you repeat that?
What I'm talking about is the immunity part. I'm not debating whether or not raw milk is good for you. I'm not debating the freedom to sell it and buy it. Just the immunity part. Do we give this sort of immunity to any other product?
I would say we give it to a lot of other products. Raw chicken, raw shellfish, raw oysters. We have to put a label on a menu for raw oysters.
In code, we give this type of protection to those who sell seafood and chicken? I can't find it.
We don't ban other products from being sold to the public. If I would like to buy chicken, I can.
I'm not talking about the right to sell it. I'm talking about the consumer's right to seek justice in a court of law.
I can't
Where
answer
do we,
that.
what other product do we give this type of immunity to? I don't believe it's in code that you can't sue somebody over a bad oyster.
We do give blanket immunity protecting under the right to farm. And this includes a lot of agricultural produce, too.
Okay. I'm
They're
unaware.
immune
I
from
was-
civil and criminal.
I couldn't
As
find
long as
any
they
other
follow
product.
federal
I
and
couldn't
state
find
code.
any other product that we did give this type of immunity to. One more question. You said there are several states, well, two more questions. How many states allow for the sale of raw milk?
I'm sorry?
How many states? You said we'd be in line with how many other states?
We have 18 states that have farmer to consumer sales, 17 states have herd share sales, 12 states have retail sales, 3 states have pet food sales.
Okay. And of these states, how many give this broad immunity to the sellers of the product?
I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I have no problem with the bill other than the last paragraph that gives this broad immunity. I don't know of any other food product or any other product at all that we give this type of immunity to. The sponsor didn't know how many other states did this, but I would imagine we'd be the only state to give this type of immunity to one food product, one that can very easily go bad. So I'm all for freedom, but I'm also allowing the freedom to seek justice in a court of law. That's a constitutional right.
Gentleman, the 42nd Doug Steele is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not going to question somebody else. I'm going to probably do more like the gentleman from the 55th. I have fought against immunity in all forms and fashion for the entire 6 years I've been here. I believe if we are making a law on this floor that goes to the other house and they vote it in and that governor signs it in, it should apply to every West Virginian, regardless of what classification they're in, regardless of what occupation they're in, regardless of what type of silo the product they're manufacturing falls into. It is fundamental to our democracy, to our democratic republic, that we have the ability to resolve grievances with one another in a court of law, where there's a jury that's impartial, unbiased. It's your 7th Amendment right to call in 6 unbiased citizens and hear the controversy between you and your neighbor if that amount in controversy is more than $20. Now, I don't know how much, maybe your hospital bill will be $13.79 if you get injured by raw milk. I don't know. But what I do know is I have fought a long time to get rid of immunity. And to the gentleman, I don't know his number. I guess it's 54. Okay, yeah. To the gentleman from the 54th, I agree. I can think of no other food product that has this type of blanket immunity to it. People get sued over eating bad chicken at restaurants all the time. People get sued for food poisoning all the time. And there's insurance that covers that. And if you're going to engage in a business, you have a responsibility to the community at large to make sure that what you're doing is not negligent, is not harmful to others, and you do have a duty, you would have an affirmative duty to the rest of the community with that. Now, there are places in code that still have immunity that I would like to see us get rid of. One of those is vaccine manufacturers. And I think a lot of us around here have taken oaths and vows and signed pledges, I have for over 6 years, to eliminate that. But in 1986, our federal government sat down and said, we're going to give these drug manufacturers complete immunity for what they're doing because it's so important what they're up to. And not only are we going to give them immunity, we're going to create a fund that's going to pay a maximum of $250,000 per incident, whether you die from it, you get sick from it, or whatever the case might be, $250,000 per incident. As of a couple years ago, from 1986 up until about 2020, the federal government has paid out over $6 billion in $250,000 maximum increments. So what you're saying with this bill, by granting immunity to all the manufacturers out there, what you're saying is not only can you not bring a claim, but that damage, that negligence, now becomes the responsibility of the West Virginia taxpayer. Because who's going to pay for him to be repaired? Who's going to pay for him to be made whole? It's the West Virginia taxpayer. So what we're saying is with immunity of any sort, whoever actually did the wrong, we're not going to hold them liable. We're going to all take one for the West Virginia taxpayer and have the West Virginia taxpayer pay the problem. Because that's ultimately what's going to happen. And with that, I'm in agreement with the gentleman from the 55th. And while I can support just about everything in this bill, we must stop granting immunity to everyone. We keep doing it all the time. If someone's breaking the law, they should be held accountable. Regardless of the place they're in, regardless of the station in life, they should be held accountable. And we've got to quit providing immunity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 18th, Doug Butler is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As everyone here knows, I am not an attorney, but I actually can read. The last sentence of this bill says, provided that a person is not protected from suit or liability for damage, loss, injury, or liability caused by the intentional or willful and wanton misconduct. So, not being an attorney, I thought, well, I wonder what those terms mean exactly. I'm not on the Judicial Committee. This bill didn't come through any of my committees. So I looked up willful and wanton misconduct. And as we all know, by searching on the internet, we can find all kind of different definitions for everything. And these are pretty lengthy, but I'm going to read them because I think it's worth noting. Willful misconduct is the intentional doing of an act one has a duty to refrain from doing, or the intentional failure to do an act which has the duty to do when he or she has actual knowledge of the peril that will be created and intentionally fails to avert injury, actually intends to cause harm. So that's pretty clear to me. If you actually intend to harm somebody, you wouldn't be covered here. So we're not given immunity in that case. And then wanton misconduct. So this is not willful, this is wanton. Wanton misconduct is the intentional doing of an act which one has duty to refrain from doing, or the intentional failure to do an act which one has a duty to do in reckless disregard of the consequences and under such surrounding circumstances and conditions that a reasonable person would know or should know that such conduct would, in a high degree of probability, result in a substantial harm to another. So this one is saying if someone, you're not immune, if you do something really dumb that causes somebody to get hurt, is the way I'd put it in plain language. So we heard the example of having shards of glass in the milk or something like that. If the person is doing something, the person that's selling the milk is doing something that can reasonably cause someone to be harmed, then they are not immune according to the last sentence here. So, I think the purpose of this clause in this bill, the immunity, is because people know when they're buying raw milk that it hasn't been pasteurized, it hasn't been through the process. So it's letting the consumer, the customer, know that you are buying something that has not been through the process. There is an element of risk here. But again, the last line says of the bill that a person is not protected from suit or liability for damage, loss, injury, or liability caused by the intentional or willful and wanton misconduct. So you don't have blanket immunity here. You only have immunity in the case that, or to let people know that this is not a processed product, I believe. So for those reasons, I'm comfortable supporting this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lady from the 73rd, Douglas Summers, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to urge adoption of the bill. My parents and grandparents are rolling over in their graves. They've been farming in West Virginia since the 1700s, and they would not believe that we think you wouldn't have the choice if you wanted to drink raw milk or not. No one's shoving it down your throat. You don't have to drink it, just if you want to drink it. We're going to give you the freedom to do that. We got a freedom bill before us finally. I think that because we've been doing herd shares for 8 years, we have kind of vetted this, because everybody that wants raw milk is getting it now under the herd share, but it's a government scheme that you got to jump through. I got to pretend, or I got to own a piece of this cow so that I can drink that milk. Let's just remove the government bureaucracy, let people do this if they want to do it, and move on. Thank you.
Gentleman, the 94th, Kump.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Permission to speak on the bill?
Yes, gentleman's recognized.
I'm not a fan of raw milk, but if somebody wants to drink raw milk, go for it. I'm also not an attorney, nor have I ever played one on TV, but I have hired, I have fired, I have supervised, and I've written the job specs of attorneys. I like the ability for people to purchase and consume raw milk, but I am really nervous and can't vote for a bill that has an immunity clause, so I'm voting no.
Gentleman from the 79th, Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from the 76th yield for a question? Thank you for yielding. There was some debate a few minutes ago about looking up definitions of intentional, willful, and wanton misconduct, and I thought it might be helpful to ask an attorney. Are you an attorney?
Yes.
Okay. If there was a situation where shards of glass were unintentionally found in milk, in raw milk that was sold to a consumer, what's your interpretation of this immunity clause?
Start out by saying what every attorney would say, which is it depends. But in reality, I mean, it's not clear that would fall anything above negligence, depending on the situation that happened. So a situation like that, I think very well you could have immunity that prevents somebody from going to court and getting any type of restitution.
So there are situations where this immunity paragraph, the last paragraph of the bill, would have a real impact on a consumer's ability to seek justice.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, thank you for yielding. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lady from the 49th, Tully's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today actually to urge passage of the bill. And if you would have ever told me when I was appointed to this seat or when I subsequently got elected that I'd ever be standing here debating this, I would have told you you needed a mental hygiene petition. But Mr. Speaker, I'm not really sure when we became so disconnected from our food. My grandparents had a farm. My mother and her sister grew up drinking raw milk, making products from raw milk. This process, everything, we do have better sanitation, everything now. I want to talk about foodborne illness and how we end up where we end up. One of the largest causes of foodborne illness is produce and listeria from produce, but we're not here trying to outlaw lettuce, nor should we be. We know that there's inherent risks if we don't clean it correctly or if it's not washed and appropriately sanitized. This is a common sense bill. It allows people that want to drink raw milk to not pretend to rent a cow to get said share of milk, and allows the freedom for individuals to actually sell the product that they have. One of the most important things when you talk about food preparation is sanitation and how you sanitize things. Some of the diseases that you hear about from raw milk usually talks about, a lot of things come from foodborne illness related to feedlot contamination or contamination of the products that actually touch the milk. Typically, I would encourage someone to go and survey the farms in which they're getting the raw milk to make sure that it is a clean operation. Other than that, I think we all have a choice to make. Life is full of inherent risks that we take, and we have to be good decision makers to calculate those risks. So for that reason, I would urge passage of this bill because it does allow choice and it does allow freedom. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 51st, Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to give a real example of something that happened, and whether you're against or for this bill, that's not the purpose. I don't think anyone in here is arguing that we should be allowed to sell raw milk. But there's two parts to this bill. One, can you sell it? The other part is the immunity. If I may, Mr. Speaker, I had a situation where a friend of mine was eating a hamburger at a restaurant, a fast food restaurant, and very first bite, took a good hearty bite and was just chomping down on it, good greasy hamburger, and just slam. Something was in that, and she immediately spit it out, and then there's employees right there beside her spit it out, and it was a nut, a steel nut, you know, that screws on a bolt, that was in the hamburger. Now, I don't know if it was in the meat, if it came through the handful of lettuce, or it was stuck in a tomato, I don't know. But this person ended up with TMJ, had a broken tooth, had severe permanent injury to her jaw, and inhibited chewing and all of that. And so I think a big question is, and again, whether you're for or against this bill, I'm not here to argue that, but a big question is, should the manufacturer of that hamburger be immune from liability? I think that's something that's been discussed. That's the second part of this bill, and of course, when we vote, we have to vote on the whole. That's just, I'll say, food for thought.
Gentleman, the 84th, Doug Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I look at it just a little bit different, because up home we sell a lot of natural milk. We all drink it. But one of the things that the reason I'm glad they have this immunity clause in here is because if someone would try to sue me, guess how much it would cost me just to represent me? Oh, I'm looking around the room from $250 to $1,000 per hour. And that is the reason, you know, they may make $100 a month off of selling milk, but it sure isn't going to pay for these lawyers that want this took out so that they can sue and so they can be represented. And I think that's where we're actually protecting the citizens of West Virginia by putting this in here, and I'm a definite vote green. Thank you.
Question still before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there other debate on the bill? Does the gentleman wish to close debate on the bill? Gentleman 93rd to close debate on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, folks, most of you know I grew up in a socialist dictatorship, and even under that dictatorship, we were allowed to buy raw milk to use. I will say this. I look around at the lawyers in the room, and I'm friends with a lot of them, but sometimes we have to accept personal responsibility. Sometimes we have to look at each other and say, I want to buy milk from you, I should be able to buy milk from you. But if I choose to buy raw milk from you and drink that and I get a little tummy ache, I shouldn't have to be able to sue a tiny little farm who's got 2 milk cows. I mean, let's be honest. If I want to buy raw milk from my neighbor, I should be able to buy raw milk from my neighbor. What I do with it is my problem. I can still pasteurize it, I can still make cheese, I can still do all the other things I want to do with it. This is America.
Debate on the bill has been closed. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 76 ayes, 19 nays, 5 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, Chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4911 relating to the sale of raw milk.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4978 relating to clarifying the authority of appointed officials.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Lady from the 73rd to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After we passed legislation last year to divide the DHHR into 3 separate departments, we met with each of the secretaries and we said, the incoming secretaries, and said, over the next 6, 7, 8 months that you're there, please let us know any areas or ways that you think that you can improve the functioning of your department. That's what this bill does. It came from the Department of Health. It splits apart the powers of the state health officer, the commissioner of the Bureau for Public Health, and the secretary of the Department of Health. The commissioner is in charge of the day-to-day operations, the state labs, and grants. The state health officer is in charge of the local health departments, the hundreds of boards that we appoint people to when we create our advisory boards here, the state health plan, sanitation, immunizations, HIV, TB, consult on EMS, tobacco, asbestos, and oral health. Additionally, the bill moves the Office of Emergency Medical Services and Office of the Chief Medical Examiner under the organizational structure of the Board of Public Health. Moves them out from under the Bureau of Public Health and places them under the Secretary of Health, as we did in the reorganization bill. Finally, the bill moves statutory location of the West Virginia Commission for Deaf and Hard of Hearing from Chapter 5 to Chapter 16. I urge passage.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there were 95 ayes, 0 nays, and 5 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4978 relating to clarifying the authority of appointed officials.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Gentleman 96th.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill take effect from its passage.
The question is on the gentleman's motion that the bill take effect from passage. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there were 96 ayes, 0 nays, and 4 members absent. 2/3 of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5013 relating to timber management.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman second, Douglas Teslow to explain the bill. Okay, gentleman from the 88th to explain the bill. Dr. Hillenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill modifies the Managed Timberland Program. The bill amends the definition of managed timberland to be more inclusive of some real estate by removing an exception to the program. The bill will allow a parcel of real estate larger than 10 acres, which is part of a subdivision, to be part of the program. These parcels will be allowed into the program if they otherwise qualify. The second change inserts 2 words into the remaining exception. In addition to deed restrictions, deed covenants, or zoning regulations which preclude harvesting, property, regardless of its size, which is subject to contracts and agreements which preclude the commercial timber harvesting, may not be in the Managed Timberland Program. I urge passage.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 97 ayes, 0 nays, and 3 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5013 relating to timber management.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 5528 relating to the Renewable Energy Facilities Program.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Gentleman is second to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
This bill modifies the Renewable Energy Facilities Program, which was passed. It was Senate Bill 583 that passed in 2020 during the regular session. This program encourages regulated public utilities to develop a limited amount of solar energy to help attract business into the state that without a source of renewable energy might not choose to locate here. There are two changes to the program, only two changes. First, the incremental steps through which a regulated utility may build solar activity are changed from 50 megawatt steps to 100 megawatt steps. This allows construction of larger, more cost-effective facilities. Now, the bill that was passed in 2020 designated 200 megawatts per regulated utility in the state of West Virginia. That number, the 200 maximum, does not change in this bill, only the increments to get there. It allows, as I said, it allows construction of more cost-effective facilities. The second thing happens, the sunset provision limiting the applications to the PSC for the construction of these solar energy facilities is removed, which means you can take as long as you need to achieve the 200 megawatt capacity. And you cannot, the other thing that does not change in this bill is before you step up from one increment to the next, you have to have sold 85% of the capacity going forward. So those are the changes to the bill. The program basically stays the same with some internal increments and an extended sunset provision. So I urge passage of this bill. Thank you.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those that, yes, show me the 84th, Doug Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
I just got one question. Do you really feel that this is going to help out our electric grid by stabilizing it?
I don't think it will not harm the grid. When you consider it, it's a good question, but when you consider it, this is for 400 megawatts of nameplate capacity. That means you probably are talking less than 100 megawatts total. When you compare it to the 16,000 megawatts of grid capacity we have on the grid here in West Virginia, it is a very, very small amount, and it cannot increase by anything that's in this bill. So my answer to you is it will not make the grid particularly stronger, but it certainly isn't going to hurt it.
Okay, thank you.
Gentleman from the 35th, Doug Advance, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Reading through the bill here on a couple of parts, one part I don't like says that they can, if they incur any loss through this, they can get it back from individual payer for up to $1,000 a month. Those people already pays the $1,000 electric bills now. And then another part also says that they will get it, shall get it from their West Virginia jurisdictional customers if the commission so finds. So it might already be there, but I'm still going to be a no on that just because of that. We pay enough money as it is for electric rates. People in my area can't even, they have to decide. Just last month, somebody had a $1,300 power bill. They had to decide whether to pay the power bill, pay medical bills, buy food, or whatever. I just can't be a yes for that. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 18th, Doug Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just, I think I want to correct a statement made by the Vice Chairman of the Energy Committee about the 200 megawatt totals that can be brought here. The lines I'm looking at here seem to say that it can be 200 megawatts for any certain corporate parent company. So I don't know that it really keeps that cap at 200. It just would allow it to continue as long as they had different parent companies. So just wanted to clarify that and give the Vice Chairman a chance to correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 98th, Delegate Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will the Vice Chairman yield? So as I look through this bill on our system, most of this is already law. I think the operative change here is changing the amount that can be designed at one time. Is that essentially the main thrust of this legislation?
That is.
And what is, and of course, there's the sunset clause. We're taking that sunset clause, it sounds like, out of there. What do you think is driving this? I mean, did you hear testimony from the power companies, the utilities, at when this legislation was considered?
Well, in point of fact, the utilities have had this since 2020, and they have not completed one of the two regulated facilities or companies that are in West Virginia has built some capacity. The other one has not, and they requested 100 megawatt capacity to foster some people to develop the renewable.
So this doesn't, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Again, I'm just trying to understand this legislation. I'm just not sure how, I'm just trying to understand the thrust of this legislation. What's driving this legislation? I see you're a co-sponsor of this legislation. Can we assume that there are folks out there that are wanting to purchase this type of energy, a greener energy in some circumstances?
There are people that have requested it, yes. And they requested there to be some renewable energy in the mix in order for them to locate in West Virginia. That has happened in the past.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 11th, Delegate Fehrenbacher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to speak to the bill. In response to my friend, the delegate from the 98th question, I did ask a representative from the electric generating utility a question about whether or not there were existing or potential job-creating opportunities associated with renewable energy, and he acknowledged that there were both. An existing company would contemplate expanding their operations and creating more jobs in West Virginia, and other companies that were considering establishing operations in West Virginia were considering, and they asked of the utility, do you have the provision to provide renewable energy? He said yes, and he actually referenced some that are current because he could not disclose the names of those companies. He acknowledged also that it would be a very small increment, and to, if you will, be redundant, this is existing permitted capabilities. We're removing the step and going from 50 megawatts to 100 for economy of scale reasons, but then secondly, removing the sunset date. This is good because it will not materially change, but will hopefully lead to more jobs by creating some small renewable energy to satisfy these companies' desire to meet their customers' requirements that their operations will utilize renewable energy. I encourage you to vote yes.
Is there other debate on the bill? Gentleman from the 100th, Delegate Rodnow is recognized.
I've had the opportunity to talk to hundreds of my constituents so far. In Jefferson County, we've had a massive solar farm that has overwhelmed an agricultural area, and we have 3 more that are far larger than that are getting ready to overwhelm certain parts of Jefferson County. My constituents are tired of solar being jammed down their throat. They don't want the Green New Deal. That's not why they sent me here. It's not why I think they sent many of you here. And I think we need to stand up and say, no, we are for coal. We are for fossil fuels. We are for the people who actually sent us here and not for a bunch of big business interests. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there other debate on the bill? If not, shall recognize the gentleman from the second, Douglas Teslo, to close debate on the bill.
Okay, we've heard a lot of things here. As far as a couple things that I need to clear up, if I can. There are two regulated utilities in this state that are capable of hosting this type of development. They are the ones in this bill. There are no other names or anything else that is going to also add to the capacity. The capacity is very, very small. The amount of change to any bills would be extremely minor. I've heard numbers tossed around like, oh, at worst, if this were to come to pass, it would be 10 cents difference in your bill. Having said that, this bill is permissive. It is not a directive for any utilities to build any solar farms or solar operations. I find it interesting that the bill passed in 2020 and the capacity is not even close to being built out yet. So in other words, when the time comes to build it, it can be built, but up to now, there isn't any great demand for it that I can see. And that's why we extend the sunset. This is something that, unfortunately, and I have my personal opinions about demanding that you have some renewable capacity. I have distinct opinions about that, but if that's what customers want and you can build it, we should have the leeway for you, the regulated utilities, to do that. I really think this bill is, as I said, permissive. I think it's a good thing to give flexibility to the regulated utilities, and I urge you all to vote yes. Thank you.
Debate on the bill has been closed. Question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 61 ayes, 36 nays, 3 members absent. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 5528, relating to the Renewable Energy Facilities Program.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 5549.
Gentleman 96th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that we postpone action one day.
Gentleman asked unanimous consent to postpone action one day on the bill. Are there objections? No objections are heard. Action on the bill will be postponed by 1 day. Are there further bills on third reading at this time? If not, bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 400, creating limited waiver from Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity requirement for certain water or sewer service projects.
Are there amendments?
The Committee on Technology and Infrastructure moves to amend the bill on page 1, section 11, line 17, by striking the words March 1 and inserting in lieu thereof April 30.
Question now is on the amendment just read by the clerk. Gentleman 22nd, Douglas Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment simply syncs it up with our legislative session next year involving a sunset date. Our good friends and colleagues in the Senate forgot that we come in February and leave in April next year. So this simply moves it to April 30th. As a result, Mr. Speaker, I urge adoption.
Question now is on the adoption of the amendment read by the clerk. Is there debate on the amendment? Is there debate on the amendment? If not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there other amendments to the bill? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
Senate Bill 507, relating to repeal of West Virginia Edge.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 544, raising threshold for bid requirement of municipal public works projects.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Chris, Riley, and Barnhart move to amend the
Are
bill.
there objections to allowing the sponsors to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Gentleman, the 72nd, Delegate Riley is recognized to explain this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill raises the threshold for bid requirements of municipal public works projects from $25,000 to $50,000. The Committee on Finance has improved upon a similar bill, House Bill 5441, and reported a committee substitute. This amendment merely amends the provisions of committee substitute for House Bill 5441 into the Senate bill. Under the amendment, the bill would increase the minimum cost of public municipal works project contracts that require advertising for public bids from $25,000 to $50,000. The bill would amend the minimum cost of local public service districts contracts that require advertising from $25,000 to $50,000 and add language consistent with current laws for bidding municipal public works projects. And the bill would establish a minimum cost of regional water and wastewater and stormwater project contracts that require advertising for public bids at $50,000 and add language consistent with current law on bids for municipal public works projects and public service district project contracts. I urge adoption.
Question now before the House is, shall the amendment just explained be adopted? Is there debate on the amendment? Is there debate on the amendment? If not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there other amendments to the bill? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 4299.
Gentleman from the 96th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that we postpone action one day.
Gentleman asks unanimous consent to postpone action one day on the bill. Does the chair hear objection? No objections are heard. Action on the bill will be postponed by 1 day. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4971 relating to critical materials manufacturing tax.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5017 relating to mobile food establishment reciprocity.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Dittman moves to amend the bill.
Are there objections to allowing the sponsor to explain the amendment? No objections are heard. Lady from the 63rd, Delegate Dittman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment just moves to strike the word 14 days and insert in lieu of 72 hours. I urge adoption. Thank you.
Question before the House is, shall the amendment just explained be adopted? Is there debate on the amendment? Gentleman from the 68th, Delegate Phillips is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment clarifies and corrects and strengthens the bill, and I urge its adoption. Thank you.
Is there other debate on the amendment as explained by the sponsor? If not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there other amendments to the bill? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5065.
Gentleman 96th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that we postpone action one day.
Gentleman asks unanimous consent to postpone action 1 day on the bill. Are there objections heard? No objections are heard. Action on the bill will be postponed by 1 day. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5082, exempt those with 25 years holding an insurance license from attaining additional CEUs.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5159 relating generally to child labor.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5175, eliminate funding for the Center for Nursing and transfer its duties and authorities to the Higher Education Policy Commission.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5223 to create the Southern Coalfield Resiliency and Revitalization Program.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5540 relating to fentanyl prevention and awareness education, Lakin's Law.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Stevens moves to amend the bill. On page 1, subdivision 1A2, line 7, by striking out the word Narcan and inserting the words naloxone or other opioid antagonists.
Question is on the amendment just read by the clerk. Chair recognizes the sponsor, Gentleman 6, Douglas Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment seeks to clarify the pharmaceutical product on which students will receive instruction for treating a fentanyl overdose. Narcan will be replaced by naloxone or other opioid antagonist instead of Narcan. Narcan is the name brand and naloxone is a generic name. I urge the adoption of the amendment. Thank you.
Question still is on the amendment as read by the clerk. Is there debate on the amendment? Is there debate on the amendment? If not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there other amendments to the bill? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5553 to provide and change graduation requirements and change duties relating to academic content standards.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5650 allows suspended school personnel to enter school property functions open to the public.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Hornbuckle moves to amend the bill. On page 3, section 8, line 48, by striking out the words children or grandchildren be and inserting in lieu thereof the words a dependent child, grandchild, foster child, or other family member being.
Question on the adoption of the amendment just read by the clerk. Chair recognizes the sponsor, Gentleman 25th, Delegate Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, what my amendment does, it just makes it more comprehensive. The prior language, it was specific to just children or grandchildren. It did not take into account any foster children or any other family members of that school personnel. I would urge the body to adopt this.
Question still is on the proposal. The proposed amendment is read by the clerk. Is there debate on the amendment? Is there debate on the amendment? Gentleman 14, Douglas Foggins, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the gentleman's amendment would expand the umbrella of protection, and I feel like it's a good amendment. Thank you.
Is there other debate on the amendment? If not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there other amendments to the bill? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Are there further bills on second reading? Bills on first reading.
Senate Bill 461 relating to County Economic Opportunity Development Districts.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5347 relating to establishing a program for emergency medical services personnel to become certified paramedics.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5361 relating to allowing influenza immunizations to be offered to hospital patients.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5635 relating to allowing patients to direct prescribers to list the illness or condition for which a prescription is being issued on the label of the prescription.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 5691 relating to a biennial capitation rate review to be conducted by the Bureau of Medical Services.
Bill will be advanced. Are there other bills on first reading? If not, leaves of absence. Gentleman 96.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, for our colleagues Anderson, Ross, and Williams.
Are there objections to leaves of absence being granted? No objections are heard. Those leaves of absence will be granted. Introductions. Miscellaneous business. Gentleman 96.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, subject to announcements, that the House adjourn until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Are there announcements?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Rules will meet tomorrow morning at 10:45 a.m. in the Members' Lounge.
Gentleman 97, Douglas Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Finance will meet today, February 19th at 2 o'clock in the Finance Committee room for a committee meeting. The agenda has been posted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman 88, Douglas Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on the Judiciary will meet today at 2 p.m. And we will call, let me start over. Members will caucus at 2 p.m., and we will meet at 2:30 in the chairman's room. Sorry for the confusion. I have another announcement for tomorrow morning. Mr. Speaker, tomorrow morning, Tuesday at 9:15, the House Judiciary Committee room. We will meet there, and members will caucus 15 minutes before that at 9 o'clock. Thank you.
Gentleman, the first.
And the agenda will be posted. May I clarify that, Mr. Speaker? It's been a long day on the floor for day 40. Let me start over with tomorrow's. I'm being graded by the gentleman to my left, by the way. Mr. Speaker, tomorrow morning, that's Tuesday at 9:15, in the House Judiciary Committee room, members, that is not right. I can do it. Tomorrow morning, Tuesday, we will meet in the committee room at 9:15, and we'll caucus in the chairman's office at 9 o'clock, and the agenda will be posted.
It's day 41, just in case you're keeping track. Gentleman first, Doug McGeehan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Government Organization will meet today at 3 o'clock p.m. in the Government Organization Room. That's room 215 East. Republicans will caucus in the chair's office at 2:45 p.m. Please do not be late. Bring your laptops, and the agenda will be posted.
Lady from the 49th, Doug Tully.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Straight from the cow's mouth, your Committee on Health and Human Resources will meet tomorrow, Tuesday, February 20th, at 3 p.m. in the East Wing Committee Room. Republican members will caucus in the chair's office at 2:30 p.m. tomorrow before the meeting. The agenda will be posted, and please bring your laptops. Thanks.
Gentleman the 43rd, Doug Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will meet today, February 19th at 3 p.m. The agenda is posted. Additionally, Republican members will caucus in the chairman's office at 2:30.
Gentleman the 21st, Doug Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure will meet tomorrow, Tuesday, February 20th at 1 p.m. in the House Education Committee Room. The agenda will be posted.
Gentleman the 99th, Doug Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Economic Development and Tourism will meet tomorrow at 3 p.m. in the House Judiciary Room. Republican members will caucus at 2:30 in the House Judiciary Committee Room. Thank you. And the agenda will be posted.
Gentleman the 47th, Doug Longenacre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security will meet tomorrow, February 20th at 9:15 a.m. in the East Wing, room 215. Agenda will be posted.
Gentleman from the 91st, Doug Forrest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your Committee on Political Subdivisions will meet tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the Education Conference Room.
Are there other announcements? If not, the questions on the motion that the House adjourns at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Those in favor of the motion will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The House is adjourned at 11 a.m. tomorrow.